If people, they tend to say that His Holiness Dalai Lama is a Gelug lineage holder. I would say that you haven't studied history well enough, because if you really examine all the history of the different religious figures, all of them has an interconnected relation, whether it's a spiritual, whether it's a teachings and empowerment and practice. There is no such thing as a singular lineage of Kagyu, singular lineage of Nyingma, singular lineage of Gelug. If you trace back of all the great masters, many of the great masters, they practice Dzogchen, Chapchen, and they all kind of have a genuine respect. It's like when you have a good heart and sincere and genuine quality, and then naturally, just like yourself, other counterpart individuals tend to attract to you, interact with you, exchange of their experience and practices, isn't it? So, if you understand that Vajrayana history, all the great masters has always had this kind of a interrelation with each other, and having that understanding is important rather than leader of one sectarian, one lineage.
Real pleasure to be here with a fraternity and a community that many of us have very strong connections to and with, and I know several of the people in the room. I will shortly be introducing His Eminence Kalu Rinpoche. But before that, just to say thank you to the Tibetans and to everyone who made this possible. Of course, the center is the host, but we are, everyone here is equally important. And thank you, Dibesh, for that introduction. So with that, I want to first begin by introducing His Eminence Kalu Rinpoche. I sort of mentioned this to him before, that he's an enlightened being. We are not. So, but there's a little, like a one alphabet difference in our names, because I'm Kaul, K-A-U-L, but it makes for a significant difference. So His Eminence Kyabje Kalu Rinpoche is the lineage holder of the Shangpa Kagyu tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. At the age of 4, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and His Eminence Khenting Tai Situ Rinpoche recognized him as the reincarnation of the previous Kalu Rinpoche, who passed away in 1989. The previous Kalu Rinpoche had been the retreat master at Palpung Monastery in Tibet, and during the 1940s and 50s, at the request of the Bhutanese royal family, he established the 3-year retreat practice in Bhutan. The present Kalu Rinpoche continues to serve His Majesty the 5th King of Bhutan. With the blessings of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Rinpoche continues the legacy of his predecessor to continue with his spiritual responsibilities, preserving and promoting the Shangpa Kagyu lineage practices and Tibetan culture, with the aim of connecting anyone interested in the teachings of the Buddha Dharma, bridging ancient wisdom with modern ways of living. Today, Rinpoche takes a modern approach to the teaching of Buddha Dharma, utilizing methods derived from Niguma yoga practice to promote mental and physical well-being in response to the 20th century's and 21st century's fast and chaotic world of materialism and stress. He also maintains and runs various charitable activities across the globe, and in keeping with the Shangpa lineage's history, he embraces the feminine aspect of Buddhist practice and wisdom, teaching regularly in many countries. We will have many interesting things to talk with the Rinpoche about, and then there is a chance for you also to make your comments and questions. But welcome, Tashidele. We are deeply grateful. And as you have probably realized by now, that Rinpoche is a very dynamic, a very spiritually dedicated individual, and I have as part of this conversation, there's a few things that I would like to feature, and the first one is to ask, inquire of you, what meaning does His Holiness the Dalai Lama hold for you personally and as a Buddhist leader?
Tashidele to everyone, and thank you so much for the organizers and University of Westminster for organizing such a beautiful event and inviting me over here. My personal relation with His Holiness Dalai Lama is equal to many other Himalayan Buddhist communities. It's not something that, handpick, special position, nothing like that, because we all love him as a living Buddha, and the living Buddha that does not pretend as a Buddha, but remains as a human being. And that is the reason why, Bhutan, Nepal, Tibet, Indian, and also the whole Buddhist communities and the international different religious community, we all love him. And for me, His Holiness Dalai Lama is very special in terms of my responsibility, because you see, when you have this monastic upbringing, even though I'm not a monk, but you have to go through the monastic training, 3 years retreat. I've done 3 years retreat when I was like 14 years old. I came out when I was 18. I had a beautiful picture about the Buddhism in what I read in my meditation box, but when you come outside of the retreat, the reality of the religion in Buddhism is absolutely different. There's no black and white, there's a lot of gray area. And then His Holiness Dalai Lama, what it done to me in my state of mind is that give me the realistic picture, how you should function, how you should engage, because normally in our very conservative religious world, we sit in a very high golden throne. And then His Holiness Dalai Lama, when he interacts with people, he sits on the stage, he sits on the chair. First glimpse of the thought impression I had was, maybe His Holiness is just trying to be relatable. But then later on I understood that his way of engaging with other people is beyond the religious hierarchy, and engaging in the human level, and then the spiritual, religious, Buddhist, cultural level comes in the much more later stages. And that's something that helped me in my terms of responsibility, because we don't have a leadership training, we don't have a business training, we have a training of 3 years retreat, and during the retreat I used to sleep a lot, so just to be clear, so don't expect any sort of a highly enlightened solutions for your life. But that is for me, and His Holiness Dalai Lama is the figure of how to be realistic and how to approach to the people and how to bring the 21st century Buddhist Dharma into our daily life. And he is the Dalai Lama that is not of the Tibetans only, but he himself, he said, he's the Dalai Lama of the world. And it has taught me a lot, and also how you teach and how you interact and how you engage. And it has been very helpful, and it is my absolute refuge as well.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure we can relate to what you said about His Holiness. As Divesh also mentioned, he visited us at this university, and and I remember, like I still have a picture of him holding hands, holding my hand. So it is indeed quite transformative. Following on from something you said, could you say a bit more about his significance for peoples in the wider Himalayan region beyond Tibet?
Well, you see, His Holiness Dalai Lama is an emanation of our Lokateshvara, and that is from the religious point of view. And from the human point of view, just like I have explained earlier, that he is a great human being with a great love and compassion, regardless of different nationalities, regardless of different culture. And Bhutan, Nepal, Tibet, India, we share, and then also Mongolia, we share one kind of a group of Buddhism, which we call it a Vajrayana Buddhism. That is the majority of our practices and so on. If you look at Southeast Asia, it's mainly Theravada. If you look at China, then it's mainly Mahayana, and Vietnam is mainly Mahayana and so on. So His Holiness Dalai Lama is the symbol and the figurehead of all our faith and practice and lineage and tradition. Because many people, they tend to say that His Holiness Dalai Lama is a Gelug lineage holder. I would say that you haven't studied history well enough, because if you really examine all the history of the different religious figures, all of them has an interconnected relation, whether it's a spiritual, whether it's a teachings and empowerment and practice. There is no such thing as a singular lineage of Gaju, singular lineage of Nyingma, singular lineage of Gelu. If you trace back of all the great masters, many of the great masters, they practice Dzogchen, Chakchen, and they all kind of have a genuine respect. It's like when you have a good heart and sincere and genuine quality, and then naturally, just like yourself, other counterpart individual tend to attract to you, interact with you in exchange of their experience and practices, isn't it? So if you understand that Vajrayana history, all the great masters has always have this kind of a interrelation with each other, and having that understanding is important rather than leader of one sectarian, one lineage, and one this.
Yes, that's a point very well taken, given that we live in a world where walls are easier to build, divisions are easier to hold on to than unity. And compassion is, of course, the root of all of this. And whether we look at this geographically or in other ways, the interconnectedness and entanglements are quite clear. Turning for a moment to your own views, Rinpoche, I would, as you might also have gathered, from what I read of Rinpoche's bio earlier, that you have, I should say, perhaps modern and progressive views on on a lot of topics, including on gender. And I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that.
I wouldn't say modern. I would say just being practical and pragmatic. I think that is very important, because if you, being a Buddhist means having a little bit of science, having a little bit of logic, having a little bit of wisdom, having a little bit of human ethic value, not the perfect condition, of course, but just a little bit of element together defines you as a Buddhist believer, or Buddhist practitioner. That is my understanding. And from my also understanding, I'm the chairman of the Bhutanese LGBTQ and so on. And they asked me to support them and etc. And then I said, well, Buddhism, we don't have this idea of, women should be less and men should be more. And like previous Kalu Rinpoche in the 1970s, he was the first Buddhist figure who established the 3S retreat centers for men and women in the 1974. So there is and then we work with all the different nationalities over the last 40 years. And then also the last 15, 16 years of my responsibility, I engage with so many different culture background, and different individuals as well. The most important is a human quality. And if you don't have a human quality, and then you're pretty much not useful to yourself or to others. And I think that is far more important. And Buddhist point of view is all about finding your own happiness beyond the illusionary mind, and not the illusionary happiness, but beyond the illusionary mind happiness. And that is the absolute goal of the Buddha Dharma. As long as that you walk towards that path, and the rest of it, you can keep it a little bit relaxed and less judgmental. The last thing the Buddhist thinks that we should, last thing that it should come from the Buddhist point of view is to telling you how to live your life. The world is already full of suffering and a lot of struggle and challenges. Then the last thing you need is a religious organization telling you how to think and how to live. And that is not what we need. What we need is a more solution, more middle path, and more sense of deeper reflection in oneself. And that is important.
Thank you very much, Rinpoche. I'm sure you're being very modest and perhaps not modern, but I think these are very profound points that you're making about the significance of not judging other people from one's own point of view.
I judge a lot of people.
Well, we practice. What would life be without practice?
I judge in silence.
It's
that's the unique part.
It's fiction that makes the mirror polished.
Yes.
So turning on for a moment to to a few I guess zoomed out long range questions. How do you see, or what would you like to say about the legacy of His Holiness the Dalai Lama 20 or 30 years into the future? The 14th.
I was there in Dharamsala for the few days of meetings of the Religious and Culture Conference. And of course, at the head of the meeting was His Holiness. And there's many religious figures from different traditions. of the Buddhist traditions. And everybody share their own topics and their own agendas and their own point of view and about the reincarnations and so forth. And from my side, it was very simple. I shared with one of the group of Rinpoches and Khenpos and professors. I said to them, just as in very humble opinion, not as a commanding sense. I said, His Holiness have gone through much more than us in life, and telling him what to do is the last thing we should be doing. And that's number one. Number two is that we just have to show absolute loyalty to his wishes, to the end. And long as that is there, everything is fine. We should not be the one who tell His Holiness that how it should be reincarnated, the way it should be reincarnated, how it should be done. That is not our responsibility, because His Holiness has gone through as a human being, not in a religious sense. Religious sense, it's an enlightened being, bodhisattva, then it goes quite far away, without judgmental and so on. But as a human being, he have gone through enough pain and suffering and experience and exposure about the world, and we should not be the one who should be dictating anything, but be absolute loyal and dedicated. And that was my comment, and I stand by that, because I am a Buddhist practitioner first and foremost, and then His Holiness Dalai Lama is our religious figurehead. So that's why the number one is that important part. And the number two is that the succession and the legacy. This is my message to all the Buddhist communities around the world. I want to use this platform to share with all of you. You see, the religious dialogue is good, but sometimes it can be not moving anything over time. Because in France we have a religious dialogue. In French Department of Culture, in order to hold the license as a Buddhist charitable organization, we are obligated to have an interreligious faith. But in that scale of the interreligious faith, that is absolutely good compared to other different countries which they don't even acknowledge other religion other than their own religion. So the France and England and such a developed country, they're doing very good. But as a Buddhist community, you are going towards a little bit different path. And I think that interreligious dialogue is not enough. Following your own Rinpoche and your own religious figures is not enough. What you need to think is how to countermeasure in the long run. And you cannot countermeasure based on this is my culture, this is my identity, this is my Rinpoche, this is my Dharma center, this is my lineage. You cannot counteract anything with that. That is bound to fail in the long run. What you need to focus is to make sure that all the Buddhist community coming together, creating a spiritual hub in their own region. It doesn't have to be in one place, or only in here, or only in India, or only in England. It can be international. It has to create a religious, cultural, economic hub on your own, with your own sense of dedication. I think that is very important, because when you don't have an economic structure around it, and the religious entity tend to influence, switch wherever there is a favor. You understand? So therefore you need to surround yourself with a strong economic structure. It doesn't have to be in one place. It can be in a different place around the world, with all the great different Rinpoches coming together, giving teaching, all the Tibetan community, Himalayan community coming together, giving a teaching, doing a conference. I think that is very important. And then it has to be surrounded with strong economic structure, equally, not just as spiritual. And I think that is very important from my point of view. It should not be in one place only. It can be in various places around the world. And because, you see, I brought the relic of the Lord Buddha, basically the bone of the Buddha, from France. It was gifted from Indian governor during the colonial time, 200 years ago, and gifted to the Thai monarchy. And then it was prophesied that that relic should go to the West after 200 years. And then in 2009, the Thai monarchy, patron, they offered to the French government. It became the state property. And then I brought that relic to Bhutan last year in November. We did the whole tour. The reason that I brought that relic to Bhutan is that because when I went to the rural area, some people have a disability, some people have a health condition, financial condition, and sometimes they wait on the side of the road to get a glimpse of me for 2 seconds. And then, of course, I come out of the car and interact with them, each of them, whoever I meet on the side of the road. And then I told myself, I don't have the miracle to give to them, but at least I can bring the Buddha to them. So I brought the relic of the Buddha, and around 240,000 people got the blessing within the span of 2 weeks, which is around the third of population of Bhutan, number one. Number two, I'm going to bring the same relic to Australia, because Australia has Vietnamese, Chinese, Tibetan, Bhutanese, Nepali, Indian communities, and Cambodian Buddhist. Because that sense of unity, initiative is very important. And it is not something that I am saying